Failure to launch.
Nope, we're going live. We're going live. Come on. And go live. There we go.
Go live, young man.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Chris Mattia. My amateur radio call sign is Whiskey 6 Alpha Hotel. We are the WaveTalkers. And joining me today are my esteemed colleagues, David W0DHG and Dan NR6V. And today we are talking about engaging the youth with amateur radio. But before we get started, let's do our regular weekly check-in. I'm going to go ahead and pull the guys off real quick here so we can do that. Let me go ahead and remove the spotlight. And as folks are kind of getting themselves set to be able to send in your check-in, I'm also just going to toss out there, if you have your radio and you've got an antenna up right now and you've got 15 meter capability, dial in to 21.270. That's 21.270. There's a station on there, KC3 BSA, Kilo Charlie 3 Bravo Sierra Alpha. It's a station that's set up at Hawk Mountain Scout Reservation. It's the ranger at Hawk Mountain is on right now. They're still calling CQ. If you've got 15 meter capabilities, give them a shout. Say hi to them, and that would be awesome. But if you've got WinLink capabilities, go ahead and send us a check-in. Use the standard WinLink check-in form. We'll step through that process here in just a second. Send it to all three of us, W0DHG, NR6V, W6AH, and our tactical call sign WaveTalkers. And in the comments field, go ahead and let us know what you're doing to engage youth in amateur radio. Getting kids involved, getting youth operators involved and licensed and involved with amateur radio is really the key to the future of our entire hobby and service. So that's what we're looking into today, and so we're asking you as well. So go ahead and fill that in. Let me switch over to the PC here, and we'll do a quick walkthrough of the check-in process for those of you who have not seen this before. All you need to do is open up WinLink, and if you're brand new to WinLink, go back and start with like episode 1. We walk you through all the steps that you need to do in order to get yourself up and running with sending WinLink traffic. We just had a group from the Philippines this past week started sending some check-ins to us. They've been following our videos, and they've been setting up new WinLink gateways in the Philippines and are establishing an entire network there. So great job on that. We're thrilled to see the WinLink networking growing in other locations as well. Anyway, in WinLink, go ahead and click on the new message window. It's up here in the upper left corner. Go ahead and click on that. Then when the new message opens up, go to select template. Click that, and it should spring open this little template manager. Go ahead and give this first one a click, which is the standard templates. And you're going to come down here. Let's go into the one that says mapping GIS forms. It's right down here. Go ahead and click the little plus sign next to that. It's going to spring open a bunch of options for you. The one you're looking for is this one down here near the bottom. It's the WinLink checkin.txt. Just go ahead and give that a double click. And if the demo gods are with you, it should open up your browser of choice. Even if you have done this before, you've saved the settings, so it helps you fill this information out. Be sure to click in this date and time field, because what that's going to do is it's going to set the form results to the current date and time based on your particular PC. And it's a great thing there. Go ahead and fill this out, select exercise, let us know the band that you're connecting with and the mode that you're going to connect with. Here in the send to, that's where you're going to fill in all of our call signs, W0DHG, NR6V, W6AH, and WaveTalkers. Then you fill the rest of the information out here at the top. You want to make sure that your latitude and longitude information is filled in. This is that comment section right here. That's where you're going to let us know what you're doing to engage youth in amateur radio. Then go ahead and submit that form right there. It'll give you an option to change the name of the subject. You can do that or not. That's entirely up to you, but you'll close your browser. It'll fill in all of this information. You just post it to your outbox and then open the session. I'm going to use Telnet because we're connected to the internet right now. And we're going to save some of the RF that's going out there, but I'll go ahead and click open session. Let's see if we've got any check-ins coming in. And it looks like we do. We have check-ins coming in from all over. So I'll download those later in the show. We'll come back. We'll check in on all of the check-ins that have come in, and we'll map them and see where everyone is coming from. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back to here, and I'm going to go back up to kind of full size. And today we are talking about engaging youth with amateur radio. And rather than go through a big slideshow conceptually with what we've been doing, David, W0DHG is, you've been really involved with this for a long time. Let me go ahead and bring you up onto screen. I'm just going to add you on. And rather than me just kind of blabbing about this, I was involved with scouting for a really long time, but as a youth, I didn't get involved on the adult side, and I was never involved with amateur radio at the time. But you've been very involved with it on kind of all over the place. So I'll just get out of the way. Go ahead. All
right. First, we're going to try to engage the cat control. I'm going to see if I can get her to go play, get a hobby. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. So, yeah, I've been involved in scouting for the last dozen years or so, very much in Los Angeles County Council. I have 3 children that are very involved, 2 Eagle Scouts and a Life Scout at this point. And one of the things that I really enjoyed was interacting with them in amateur radio. And when I first got involved with scouting, I think part of what pulled me in was I showed up as a dad, and we'll talk about Girl Scouts too, Steve. So don't forget about that, because my daughters were also involved in Girl Scouts, Silver Award winners. When I first got involved with scouting, I showed up as a dad, and we went on a backpacking trip, and I was already an amateur radio operator at the time, and they had FRS radios, and they were talking from the front of the backpack line to the back of the backpack line. And as we got spread out, I tuned my amateur radio onto the frequency just to listen only, because we know it's not allowed to transmit on those frequencies. But as we started to have some problems and it may have reached an emergency point, I was able to hop on that frequency and say, hey, I can hear you in the front of the line, in the back of the line. Tell me what you need the message you need me to get out, and we'll get it out there. And by the time we got to dinner that night on that first backpacking trip that I did with them, I had a number of the adults saying, well, how did you talk to everybody so far? Because usually we can only hear around the next corner. And I think within about 12 months, there were 10 adults and 2 scouts in our troop that were licensed technicians. And it kind of started our troop off on going down the amateur radio path. There is a lot of amateur radio available in youth programs. Mostly what we'll talk about today is scouting, whether it be Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts. There's also Youth on the Air, which is not a scouting program at all, and it kind of covers a bunch of different things. And we'll just kind of talk through it and share it with you. And part of the reason we're talking about it today is next weekend, starting Friday night and going through Sunday, is the yearly event that we call Jamboree on the Air. And Jamboree on the Air is coming up into, I believe it's its 65th year, and it is the largest scouting event of the year. It's an international event that scouts from all around the world participate in Jamboree on the Air in some way, shape, or form. And it's an opportunity for amateur radio operators to expose the youth to our wonderful hobby. So I'm going to just kind of talk through it and walk through it, show you some ideas. And by the time we get to the end today, I hope that each and every one of you want to figure out how in your community you could participate. And it may just be a matter of turning a radio on and listening for a scout to call. Chris is going to post in the show notes as we're done today some of the links so that you can go out and figure out what frequencies are available and where folks will be. And I'll show some of that too as we talk about it as we go through the day today. So I'm going to share my screen because nobody needs to see my face. And as I talked about, Jamboree on the Air, so I'm going to start here. This is the international website. This is actually not Boy Scouts of America. This is the international scouting movement. And they host and support JOTA and JOTA. JOTA, Jamboree on the Air, and JOTA is Jamboree on the Internet. Jamboree on the Internet started up about a dozen or so years ago. So there are opportunities for scouts, again, around the world to either talk on amateur radio or talk over the internet. And when it started off as Jamboree on the Internet, it was kind of our IRLP, but there's some other options as well. This is a great site to talk about. You can register your group to participate. My focus has mostly been the Jamboree on the Air, and as you can see here, the ARRL is a huge supporter of Jamboree on the Air. And again, in October 14th through 16th, this coming weekend, will be this big event. Amateur radio operators all across the nation, all across the U.S. will be getting out with either their troops or going out to support their troops. In fact, Chris and Dan and I are going to go out on this next Saturday. We're going to go out to a local state park, and it's actually a Parks on the Air. So we may be advertising some POTA activations while we're out there and showing the scouts, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts that come to our event, what it's all about. The nice thing is the ARL does support it. As you would usually see on an ARL site, there's lots of questions about, what happens and how do we take part and what's the licensing and what are the rules? And, the reality is, as an amateur radio operator, if you're sitting in front of your radio and a scout's there with you and they want to operate a radio as the control operator, you can let them hold the mic and let them operate, let them get on the air, let them talk to either other amateur radio operators or other scouts that are at other Jamboree on the Air locations, and they can communicate back and forth. I've been doing this for about 9 years. We started doing the Jamboree on the Air at our local church that sponsors our scout troop. And then over the years, we've worked out better locations. The location that we're going to go to next week, again, is part of the Santa Susana Mountains Park area. We're going to be at Sage Ranch Park. And we've been doing it for a long time there. There's almost no man-made improvements at that park. There are very little electrical power lines, so there's almost no noise. And we've made international contacts there. Actually, one year I had visited our local HRO that's now closed in Burbank about 3 days before. And while I was in there, the manager of the HRO knows that I do this. And he said, "Oh, hey, this guy's here." And he introduced me to this gentleman. And the gentleman said he had a grandson that's in scouting and that they were going to be doing Jamboree on the Air. And he was trying to figure out a way he could talk to them over the weekend. And I said, "Oh, we're going to be at this park. You're welcome to come join us. Where's your grandson?" He's in Pennsylvania. And I said, "We'll give it our best shot." And he showed up in the morning, and there were some phone calls back and forth. I guess we could say he spotted his grandson, and we were able to make a contact on 20 meters. And they talked for almost an hour on amateur radio back and forth on 20 meters. And it was a great day for him. It was a great day for the scout on the other side. And he did reach out to me later on and said after that was over, his grandson actually went out and got his technician's license. It was so much fun. And several other folks in his troop. There's a lot of information here if you're interested in it. The thing for me, the most exciting part for me when I started was the patches. Here's the patch for the current year. I have a whole huge collection of patches from over the years of the Jamboree on the Air, Jamboree on the Internet. It's a big thing that the scouts like to collect. But there's lots of rules, information, how you can join if you want to register. It may be a little late right now for you to reach out to your local scouting groups, but who knows? There may be some opportunities to still get involved and engaged. There's some other websites that are really good to support the program. K2BSA is it's a private site that's maintained. It's Friends of Scouting, and they support amateur radio through the United States Scouting Program. They sponsor radios that are deployed at different scout camps across the United States. They have some radios that are out to loan. They have relationships with ICOM. ICOM's put together a number of Pelican cases that have 7300s and antennas and power supplies and whatever that they loan out to different councils across the nation, so that if you don't have the proper equipment and you plan ahead of time, you can get stuff sent out to you so that you can support either a JOTA event or like a radio scouting day. And again, lots of information here if you're interested in participating, how you could participate, what you would want to do. Here's a picture of the last year's Jamboree on the Air patch. I didn't get this one yet, but I'm still looking for it on eBay. Someday I may get some. Some years they sell out, and some years they're available a lot longer. If you are interested in participating, the Boy Scouts of America website has some really good guidelines for operators, and we're going to kind of walk through a little bit at a high level to show you how you could participate. And looking at the list here, you can see this isn't just a little event, it's a big event. They're providing information about where the suggested bands that we should be operating on single sideband, on CW, the digital modes, although they're still calling it PSK 31, but the digital modes that you would do, including 2 meters, 70 centimeter, and some of the other D-Star, DMR, IRLP, Echolink, APRS, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of resources here if you wanted to get involved. And I'll show this again, on the single sideband. I think that's the best way to reach out to our youth. If you're available next weekend, you're not doing anything Friday night, Saturday, Sunday. Obviously, Sunday you're going to be here with us for WaveTalkers. But during the other hours, if you've got a radio set up for voice, you can see here 6 to 80 meters. There are suggested recommended frequencies to be on. Tune those frequencies up, tune around, see what's there. You probably will hear a scout on the air calling out, and they're going to fumble a little bit because they haven't done this a lot. But reach out to them, be friendly, talk to them about what they're doing, where they are. It gives you a really good feeling. It's nice to be able to reach out. And some number of these scouts over the years may be inspired to actually go and get their amateur radio license. I think through the 7 or 8 years that I've done this, probably have had 400 or 500 scouts go through the Jamboree on the Air weekends themselves. I know a lot of the scouts in my troop, a number of them have been licensed, and the other ones have got licensed as well. Looking at a couple of their sites, again, we showed you the international website. There's a lot of good information here. There's some other programs as well. Youth on the Air is a really great program. This has nothing to do with scouting at all. This is an amateur radio, funded organization. Youth on the Air sponsors youth events, and they have lots of activities every year. They sponsor summer camps for youth aged 15 to 25. They have different contests all throughout the year, including DX adventures. There was a really great interview I heard on one of the podcasts a couple weeks ago. A couple of the scouts that started off on JOTA went out to one of the islands in the South Pacific. I don't remember exactly which island it was, and did a de-expedition. So there's some really great resources here. When we talk about what scouts would do, back to the K2 BSA page, for JOTA weekend, they're going to get on the air. They're going to talk on the radio. They're going to see what amateur radio operators do, but they also have the opportunity to earn a merit badge as a in the Boy Scout program to attain the rank of Eagle Scout. And we'll call it Chris Mattia here. Chris Mattia is an Eagle Scout. You have to earn 21 merit badges. There's 13 of them right now that are required merit badges, things like first aid, emergency preparedness, a bunch of different in the society community type ones that talk to you about as a good citizen in your community, what do you need to do. But radio merit badge is we call it an elective. It's one of the optional ones, and it's not one of the leading optional ones. Usually rifle merit badge is like at the top after the ones that are required, but radio merit badge is a good one. They do have several thousand every year. And this site kind of goes through the books over the year, and I'll tell you that the two on the top here, I have several copies of these. I actually have the next two after that, and I'm constantly seeking these other four that go back from 1965, 1947, 1940, and 1927. They were offering the radio merit badge back to 1927, and as you can see on the cover here of this copy that came out of the BSA archives, it wasn't just broadcast radio, because if you look at the patch, and the patch is pretty much still the same today, there's Morse code on that patch, and the Morse code on that patch spells out BSA. And so they were doing back to 1927, the Boy Scouts of America were teaching scouts about amateur radio, and not only the hobby, but different opportunities you had in professional life to do radio. And that's one of the fun things that we do, and we offer that out. Here's a great graphic, and I don't know, is this too small to see, Chris? Let's see if I can blow this up a little bit.
Yeah, if you can command plus a couple of times.
Yeah, give me a couple of seconds here. Here we go.
Dave, while you're working on that radio merit badge, is that just for scouts? I mean, I know to earn the badge, but is anyone able to just download or get a copy of the book and use it as a guide to help work with youth on some common things?
Absolutely. You can order these books online. Actually, the BSA program has started to that's not right. The Boy Scouts of America have stopped publishing the paper books, and mostly now they're publishing those books electronically. You can literally go out to Amazon and search out BSA Radio Merit Badge book, and you can download a PDF copy of it. And there's some really great information, and the Radio Merit Badge book kind of goes through and covers both amateur radio, broadcast radio, shortwave listening, and it takes you through the entire thought process around, what's radio? What does radio mean? And a merit badge is not a bachelor's degree in anything. It's an introduction to something, and usually there's a number of requirements that you have to perform. It's learning something about something. And as we walk through that merit badge, it shows you, hey, well, what's a radio? And when we talk about radio, there's, we talk about receivers and we talk about transceivers. Well, what's a receiver? And, the easy thing you talk about with youth is, you're in your mom or dad's car and you're listening to the FM radio. Well, that's a radio receiver. There's somebody on the other end, and they're either talking to you or they're playing you music. That's one way. One person talks and lots of people listen. And then we get into transceivers. What's a transceiver? A transceiver is something that can not only listen, but it also talks. And, in the amateur radio world or in the professional services world, whether you're a firefighter or a policeman or a truck driver, or any of the other, trades where you have to have two-way communications back and forth, taxi drivers, airplane pilots, they all have opportunities to talk on a radio, and we talk about that. We talk about Morse code. We talk about the ITU phonetics. That's one of the most fun things about doing the radio merit badge is, we give them a list of all the ITU phonetics, and we have them, give us your name in ITU phonetics. I'm Delta Alpha Victor India Delta, and the kids get really into that, and they start talking this and talking that and back and forth, and then they start doing code words that they think that we don't understand. But I get the ITU phonetics, so we go through that really quick. we talk about the different types of radios, what UHF, VHF, and HF means. They get to actually sit down and provide out a spectrum chart. So anyways, let me go back to this. So here's radio merit badges awarded throughout the years, starting in 1949, about 400 of them. And in the last year, 2021, something like about 4,500 scouts earned the radio merit badge. Let me pull you out of this. There's lots of amateur radio information on the internet about this, including here's a podcast, and you might recognize somebody there that we talked about this about 4 or 5 years ago. It's another program that I participate in, and we interviewed one of the hosts for the K2 BSA, one of the leaders in that program, and talked about what they did, what kind of options you can do to help, and how you can support the program. The Girl Scouts of America has had a number of radio type instructional items as well. They participate in Jamboree on the Air, and they have for a long time. When my girls were active 4 or 5 years ago in the program there, they do journeys. That the Girl Scouts programs do journeys, and journeys are a lot more than a merit badge, but again, not quite a bachelor's degree in something. So they spend 9 months or so learning about a subject. And 5 or 6 years ago, they had a journey that was about radio communications, and it included not only broadcast radio, but amateur radio as well. It was a good opportunity to expose them to, what the possibilities are, not only in the hobby, but for careers as well. Let's see. I had some other stuff I want to share. If I can find it on my screen here, just bear with me for a second. There's a quick video. There we go. See, I'm not sharing. Got to find my share button. Where's my share button? There we go. Share my screen. I'm going to play a short little video here from the K2 BSA website. And this will kind of show you like what happens with scouts. Oh, wait, I didn't do you can't hear it, can you? Let's see.
Yeah, unshare, and then make sure you click the share the audio button while you're doing that.
Yeah, sorry about that.
And you said, David, a question came in the chat about where the frequencies are. So that's on the JOTA site itself.
Yeah, I'm gonna show it to you guys again, and then if you go to the JOTA site, if you go to the JOTA site, or if you go to the BSA or the ARRL JOTA site, they'll have not only international frequencies, but also US frequencies. And I'll bring that up in a moment after we show this video. So hopefully can make this work.
On the Air and Jamboree on the Internet.
Yes,
This video is going to answer the questions: what is JOTA Jody? How does it fit in scouting? And where can you sign up? JOTA Jody is scouts engaging in conversations across the country and around the world. They get a glimpse of other cultures and regional differences. They get exposed to technology, fun, and just magic. It's the largest scouting event in the world, with nearly 1 million scouts participating across 150 countries. It includes all scouts, Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, and it's always the third weekend in October. Jamboree on the Air uses amateur radio to communicate with other scouts. It uses all aspects of amateur radio, from shortwave to satellites. It requires a licensed operator, but ham radio clubs are eager to provide support. Jamboree on the Internet uses a computer and the internet to communicate with other scouts. There are online chat rooms hosted by ScoutLink. Skype and social media are other active channels, and there are many online games and challenges to keep Scouts engaged. So how does it fit in Scouting? Well, of course, there's a patch and awards. The annual USA and World JOTA Jody patches are available. The Arrow of Light has a JOTA requirement, and the International Spirit Award also has a requirement. Plus, it extends a Scout's outlook on the world. So where can you sign up? Your council or district may already have one or more JOTA Jody locations, or you can get your unit involved. Start planning now by reaching out to local amateur radio clubs. The ARRL has a Find a Club website to help you. There are many online resources as well. The go-to websites are scouting.org/JOTA or scouting.org/JOTI. There's the World JOTA Jody website, ScoutLink, and K2BSA. The next steps are check your council, district, and unit for their local JOTA Jody plans, start your own plans, reach out to local amateur radio clubs and get them involved, and set up your facilities to handle either JOTA, Jody, or better yet, both. That's Jamboree on the Air and Jamboree on the Internet. Don't miss out.
Okay. So I'm going to quick flash up here on the screen. Oh, if I can find my, nope. Okay, hold on one sec. Sorry, my daughter needs cooking support. Okay, so, all right, back to the show in progress. Sorry, Chris. Let's see if I can find my editor here. So how can you participate or get involved? And you can do that if I can find my screen here to share. Had we planned this out a little bit better, we would have had you step up and reach out to your local troops a little bit earlier on. But at this point, we're going to start here. How can you get involved? This is the World Scouting Frequencies. Well, why is this important? This is what they're telling the international community. These are shared, again, around the world with Scouts. And this is where they're asking Scouts to go to look for contacts, both on phone and CW. So if you're around next weekend and between now and then, you don't feel like you want to go find a local Scout troop and say, hey, I'm going to come out and to a park somewhere or work with you at your camp or whatever to set up equipment. If you could just go out, listen to these frequencies, listen for Scouts to call, and just be friendly and realize they're not going to be professional amateur radio operators. So they're going to do the best that they can. Listen for them to call and just call them back. Because the best thing that happens, and I've done this for years, and I kind of got hooked the first year, was when a Scout puts out a call and, you give them their call sign and they may or may not get it right. When they hear the call sign come back to them and they ask them a question, their eyes light up and they're so excited. Someone's calling me and they want to talk to me. And then they kind of vapor lock because they don't know what to say. And that's okay. We're going to coach you through that part too. These are the World Scouting frequencies. And again, we're going to post this on the website. So don't worry about getting screenshots right now. It'll all be posted up there. These are the frequencies that we showed a little bit earlier for the BSA is sharing. These are voice frequencies across the bands. There are CW frequencies across the bands here. Honestly, my experience has been the CW stuff is much less popular. Scouts actually still do learn Morse code as an optional learning, but it's not quite as exciting or quite as active. But there's digital modes as well. And here's some of the digital frequencies where that you might be in. And they're saying PSK 31, but if you're in those areas, some of the traffic you'll see will be RTTY. Not so much of the new JT digital
Like
context.
Yeah.
There's not so much of that. Some of the sites will have it operating and running so that scouts can see what happens, but it's not as exciting for them to see somebody put out a call and somebody come back and somebody back and forth. And I saw Eric asked in the chat, and yes, I'm going to answer your question for sure. 2 meters, 70 centimeters. Absolutely. There is traffic. Oh, let me see if I can get this to fit on my screen. Think of your local 2 meter, 70 centimeter sprint contests. Those are the places where you're going to see some traffic, as well as repeaters. In the Southern California area where we live, we let the repeater owners know on the weekends before on the Papa system, on the Darn system, Cactus, and CalNet that, hey, this is a Jamboree on the Air weekend. There's going to be some traffic on your repeaters. As long as you're okay with that, we'll be there. We'll call. And usually that's a great time to make a plan with your local radio group to say, hey, we're going to support this event. We need 2 or 3 or 4 people to be available and hang out on the repeaters for shifts so that people can call and talk to scouts on the air. Some of the years when we've done this, we haven't found anybody locally or there's not a lot of activity on the repeaters. So usually what I'll do is I'll give one of the adults that's a licensed operator. I'll give them a handheld and say, go hide in your car, go on the other side of the parking lot, go walk away so the scouts can't see you. And I'm going to put them on the same frequency as you are, and you can talk back and forth. But there are, again, options here on 2 meters, 70 centimeter. There are D-Star reflectors that are specifically allocated to JOTA. REF 033 Alpha is a D-Star reflector that's set up for that. There are some DMR talk groups that are set up for this as well, and as well as Brandmeister, and there's some IRLP traffic and activity. So what's my ask for you? Let's see. Am I still sharing or no?
You are. Oh, no, you're not right now.
No, I'm not. Okay. And what's my ask for you? My ask for you is, if you're available, you got nothing better to do than sit and watch the news all day. That's what my mom's doing upstairs, and I try to get her not to do it so much. Turn your radio on, listen. And again, UHF, VHF is cool. If you got the HF equipment, that's great too. But just turn your radios on, get them on those frequencies. Listen for those scouts to call. Be nice, be friendly, and encourage some of them. Those scouts now, those youth now that have a good experience on the Jamboree on the Air weekends, I have seen a number of them take interest, even if it's 10%. Again, I've had 500 kids through my programs throughout the years. 50 of them have been licensed, probably not quite that many, but a number of them have. This past year, I have worked a number of major events, the Baker to Vegas race, that's 120 miles through Death Valley, or the Angeles Crest 100 race, that's 100 miles through the Angeles Crest. This was the first year I brought and had a volunteer who's one of the Eagle Scouts that I worked with as a youth. He's now, I think he's 22 years old. He's now an amateur radio operator. He participates in these events. He volunteers with one of the local Sheriff's Department search and rescue, and he got involved and hooked to this because he came to Jamboree on the Air with me like 8 years ago when he was still a youth participating in the program. That's the way that we can help inspire the youth to get involved in our hobby. And my hope is having more and more of those kids get involved, have a good experience, enjoy themselves, such that they want to get licensed, they want to move forward. All 3 of my kids voluntarily, and I'll say that again, they voluntarily got licensed. I didn't force any of them. I didn't sign them up or force them to go to class. They all decided that they wanted to go. They've participated in a lot of these events over the years, and it's a lot of fun. It's very rewarding, and they enjoy themselves. In the Southern California area, I know of 5 sites that are planned right now. The Sage Ranch Park in Chatsworth that we're going to do. The Santa Monica Mountains, the Nike site where we do our field day from. There's going to be a group up there. Every year in the West Side, there's a scout group there that sets up and they participate from a park there. The in the Long Beach area, the USS Iowa is a battleship that's there moored as a museum. They have a radio station there, and they have I think they have a kilowatt amplifier or something like that, and they put that up every year, and they run pretty much all weekend long, as in addition to a couple of other smaller scout events. So probably where you are in your area, there's some group that's going to be out there, and they're going to be looking for contacts. So listen, turn on your radio. The national calling frequencies are a great place to look for scouts. They will be there. They will be calling, not all weekend long, maybe, but you think about the time that scouts are good for would be, Friday after school into the evening. A lot of them will camp out for this weekend. Saturday morning as they get up after breakfast throughout the day. Saturday evening as they're getting ready to go to bed, and then some of them will even be around on Sunday morning as well. And if you can go out and talk to them, it's very useful and helpful. There's one more site I wanted to share with you. If I can get back to this. If you are going to do this, the K2 Bsa site is a really awesome site. I didn't hit the share button. Can you see it now?
Yes, we can.
Super. There's some station planning tips here. Actually, you know what? It's the, pardon me. It's this, it's actually the ARRL site. On the ARRL site, of course, I'm not going to be able to find it right now. We'll post this in the show notes. There's a great page that talks about questions. I had this open. Here we go. K2 Bsa site. And Chris will have this in the show notes. K2 Bsa on-air-questions-2 Ask Scouts. There's a whole list of questions here. Unlike most amateur radio operators, where if you get them on a mic and you get somebody listening, we can talk for a long time about almost anything, including how it's going, what we had for breakfast, how our back feels, what medications we're on, so on and so forth. But when you get scouts on the air, they're not quite as comfortable with doing this. There's a whole list of questions here that you might, if you're participating in the program, ask them, and it helps get them motivated, because think about your first time as an amateur radio operator. Somebody put a mic in front of you and you push to talk. You had mic fright. I had it. It took me a while after I was licensed until I actually talked on the radio. But there's great questions to ask. Where do you live? What school do you go to? What do you like? What's your favorite subject? Have you heard of Morse code? What's the weather? Where you are. There's all these great questions to kind of spark a conversation. And once you get some of them going, some of them, it'll be hard to get them to stop talking. And some of them, you'll have to go back to this list a couple times and get them to go. And, ask them open-ended questions so that they can respond to you. It's very rewarding. There's a lot of fun that can be had from this. It's also a great opportunity as, we get through. Last month was Preparedness Month. This is another great opportunity. It's one of the opportunities I use every year to get my equipment out, to get it set up, see if it works. If it doesn't work, fix it. Because there's lots of pressure on, because there's lots of kids sitting around. They want to get on the mic. They want to talk. It's just a way to get the equipment out. And especially the last couple of years, we've been stuck at home. A lot of the gear hasn't been touched, hasn't been talked on, it hasn't been utilized. Here's a great opportunity for you to do that.
David, my first experience doing JOTA was pretty much one of the things you were describing. Is I saw a note go out, or I heard something on one of the repeaters that said, "Hey, there's JOTAs going on. There's Jamboree on the air, and there are a bunch of scouts going, and hop onto this frequency." So I hopped onto the frequency, and as soon as I called back to the group who was calling out, it was a steady flow. I think I spent maybe an hour or two on the frequency with them. We were on an HF frequency. And they would just put kid after kid after kid on the microphone, and each one, I really wish I had known about the site that had the questions there, because I was having to come up, so what's your name? What do what do you want to do? Or, whatever kind of things I was asking them. But the kids would get so excited. And once they had somebody who was engaging with them on the air, all of the things that we all experience with amateur radio about how fun this hobby actually is when you get on the air and you start engaging with people, these kids just ate that up instantly. And it really provided a path for many of them to then want to go out and hop on the air, get their license, and engage with amateur radio. When you were just going through that, one of the questions that I had when you were showing all of the frequencies, what class of license for the HF frequencies, the sideband ones, what class of license do amateurs need to have in order to operate on all of those? Are any of them in the extra class, or most of them in general? Are there frequencies that technicians, aside from the 2 meter, 70 centimeter? I mean, that's a great place to connect with scouts.
Yeah, that's one of it's actually one of the areas that's been a little frustrating for me over the years, being a general. If I go back and figure out how to share my screen again, the world scouting frequencies that they talk about. Here we go. Share my screen. Found the button. Can you see me now? There we go. So if you look at 40 meters here, I think 80 meters here, I think 394, that you could use as a general. The 40 meter frequencies, sadly, that's the extra frequencies only. The 20 meter frequency there, generals could use that. And then down below that, I think mostly those are friendly for any and all. When you look at what the BSA kind of models that, but in the BSA, they realize that, hey, in the 40 meter area, the stuff that they're putting out internationally, that's the extra range. But this range here, the 7.27 to 7.290, that's an area that a general could use. And then the stuff below this is more, we call more friendly.
Yeah.
And again, as you go into the 2 meter and 70 centimeter and below that, there's lots of opportunities there. If this is fun for you, if you enjoy this, if you wanted to get more involved after Jamboree on the Air weekends there's lots of opportunities to get involved with your local scouting group. Like we talked about, Radio Merit Badge is not a one day of the year thing. It's any time that you can get the group out. We have offered it at our field days, both winter and the regular summer field days. We've offered it for other random times. When I used to be a scout leader, there were a couple of weekends a year that was the part of the carrot that I would use for my new scouts to go on their first backpacking trip. And they were always scared because, backpacking and hard, and how do I dig a cat hole, and how do I poop in the woods, and all those other things. I would include a Radio Merit Badge on that weekend, and we would bring stuff along, and you can sign up with the Boy Scouts to become a Merit Badge counselor to teach Radio Merit Badge. And it's all stuff that we know as amateur radio operators. It's talking about, again, what's one-way versus two-way radio. It's talking about the rules that you have for amateur radio and regular radio. It talks about, well, why am I W0DHG, or why is it KNX 1070? It's discussing those things so kids understand why those rules are in place. Why do we have those things? It's talking about the ITU phonetics. It's talking about why Morse code. It's talking about different operating. We have voice, we have CW, we have digital modes. It talks about lots of options for careers in radio. And then pretty much every merit badge is the fun part, the activity. There's usually one or two activities that you get to actually do something. And it's not just about learning. It's not just about bookwork. One of the things you need to do to earn the radio merit badge, it could be that you shortwave listen. It could be that you go and visit a broadcast radio station, or it could be that you get together with an amateur radio operator and see their station. And it literally says in the rules, visit an amateur radio operator and see their station. Well, I like to take those rules kind of outside the box, because my radio station is almost anywhere I go with an HT. It's definitely anywhere I drive my truck, because in my truck there are 4 radios and they're running all the time whenever it is that I'm there. So we take them out in the field, and I bring a bunch of radios, and they're FRS radios, but the kids don't need to know that, and it's not really important. And we give them activities. One of the requirements, one of the things that they want youth to do is to have a 10-minute conversation on a radio, whether it's real or practiced. Have a great time. Whether it's real or practiced. And I give them a script. I give them actually 2 pages worth of fun activities. And there's a quick script. One scout has a script of things that they're supposed to talk about, and then the other scouts are they're receiving the information. They're supposed to scribe it down, and then there are some prompts on the next page, which is radio traffic that they're supposed to pass. Just like we do in Aries. I'm very involved in Aries, and we support hospital traffic, right? We need to know what in the Los Angeles area, if there's a disaster, we need to know what hospital bed counts are and what roads are open. So we give them little short paragraphs of information that they're supposed to send from one radio operator on one side of the park to another radio operator on another side of the park. And I give them a blank piece of paper, and I give them some lines and a pencil, and they pass the traffic back and forth. And often we need to do 10 minutes of it. Often after about 45 minutes of them talking back and forth, we have to recall them back, or we have to chase some of them down. They're having so much fun talking on the radios.
That was actually one of my big frustrations when I was working on my technician license. Was before you get your license to be an amateur radio operator, you can't push the button. You can't talk. You can't actually experience radio. I love the fact of using things like FRS radios to get youth engaged on this, or setting up a site, or even setting up at your local park. Like it's great to do this for activities like JOTA, but being able to set up at your local park, someplace in public, kind of like your own little micro mini field day, if you will. And invariably, people stop by and want to know what you're doing. And so it's perfectly fine to allow third-party traffic in most situations. So engage with the youth that's out there when they stop by. It's even fun to sometimes set up my local park just down the street from me. There's all kinds of, there's a playground. There's lots of kids who kind of are running around. And every single time I've set up down there, somebody has wandered by and they're like, hey, what are you doing? And what's going on here? And they're like, and it's like, oh, listen, come here. Look, I'm talking to somebody in Puerto Rico, or I'm talking to somebody in, wherever, listen to this. And almost always somebody in the group who's wandered is like, oh, I'm from Puerto Rico, or my family's from Puerto Rico, and or wherever it happens to be. It really helps kind of engage kids, and it gets them just in that first get on the air experience to a whole different realm. And when I got licensed, one of my big aha moments for me in particular was, oh my gosh, I've been walking around with my cell phone in my pocket for I don't know how long, and there are like a ton of radios that are inside of this. Anytime you're using the internet, if you're using Wi-Fi, you're using radio technology. Anytime you're using, using a GPS to find location, you're using radio technologies, RF technology, to be able to pass traffic. And realizing that, helping kids to see that, really gets them engaged very quickly.
The first year I did Radio Merit Badge, one of my scouting friends up in the Santa Clarita Valley area, asked me, hey, I know you're signed up to do this Radio Merit Badge thing, and I hadn't done it yet. And I had planned to do it, and we were trying to figure out. He said, well, can you come up and teach it for me? And there's this great park. We can go sit up in the park. And we went and we set up in the park, and it was a blast. I thought, hey, we're going to be there for like 3 hours. And I went, actually visited with the group 2 weeks before, and we did the book work. So there's a lot of book work on this. Merit Badge is not supposed to be like school. There is some stuff that's like school, because you want them to learn something about it, the technology of how radio works. So there are some schematics you actually have to look at and draw. What's a receiver, what's a transceiver, and they give you all the information so you can do it. What does the frequency, the spectrum look like from light to dark, right? They actually have to draw that. That's part of the process. We do that in the kind of the classroom environment. When we got out to the park, I brought go boxes, I brought this, I brought that. And I started with, here's a tree, here's a rope, here's a golf ball. Nobody get hurt, but we need to get that golf ball high up in that tree that we can, so that we can put up, and it was like a 40-meter dipole. We get it up on this side, we get it up on that side, and that's going to allow us to talk outside of the local area. That was like 45 minutes of the scouts having a really good time, pulling it up on one side. No, I can get it higher. Pull it up on the other side. No, I can get it higher. And while that's all going on, I kind of sat back with the adults, the parents, and they wanted to know this and they wanted to know that. And I had random people in the park coming up to me, and I print flyers. The ARL have some really great flyers about what is amateur radio. And I'm handing them out left and right and talking to them about that. We get it up in the tree, and then, the scouts are like, well, what do we do with it now? Well, we plug it into this box, we plug it into that box, and we show how it works. And, I pull up WWV is a great example of, well, what's out there, right? So we tuned it up, and I went 10 megahertz and 15 megahertz, and 10 megahertz where we were was Hawaii, and you could tell because she's talking, right? And then 50 megahertz was Colorado, and you could tell because he's talking. And they want to know, well, what's the pinging, and what's the what, and what do they talk at the top of the hour, and what's important about this? And you walk them through all that, and it is a really great kind of like activity moment. And then when they saw me bring out the boxes of the HT, and I started handing out HTs, they were like, "Oh, I get to do it!" And it is so very exciting. And actually, the first time I did it, that first time, I actually had programmed the radios both on ham frequencies and on the FRS frequencies, because I wasn't sure I was going to get enough operators. I had one other volunteer ham operator. Two of the kids we put on 5.2 simplex, and I sent one of the adults that was a ham out with one of the kids, actually two of the kids, so three of them went together, and I sat with two of the kids and whatever, and we actually talked on the amateur radio frequencies. The other kids that went out on the other frequency, they didn't know, and it didn't really matter. They were talking on the radio, and those are the kind of moments where it's not just sitting in class learning, 2 + 2 is 4, and this frequency, and there's the square and the sign, and PR equals, and this, it doesn't matter. It's getting this in their hands so that they can talk. This is the stuff that's like cool, right? And as you said, Chris, the technician license is a licensed to touch this. You don't have it before then, and that's one of the it's an advantage and a disadvantage, because if we had everybody that could talk on these radios without having a license, it would be a busier place. But it does kind of spark the interest and get them going and getting them talking about it. And I love where Michael said somewhere up in the chat, Cam5 BOR, if you get them involved in amateur radio, they'll never have enough money to do drugs.
Right.
Right. Gonna spend all their money on amateur radio.
Hey, Dave, if you were going to go and set up, let's say you're going to set up at a local park, or you're going to work with a troop or any other youth organization, it doesn't have to be scouting. I mean, that's actually one of the things that I really like about when we started talking about doing this episode. We were like, well, clearly you and I know a lot about scouting because we've been involved with it for a lot of years, but really the program that scouting has laid out with JOTA, with Radio Merit Badge, with all these things is really kind of a roadmap for how you can work with any youth organization. The materials are already out there available for anyone to kind of look at. So you can use that as a kind of a guide to get yourself started. One of the other resources that, as I was doing a little bit of research on this, I found was a project that ICOM did a number of years ago. Here, let me bring this up, and I'll put myself down in the corner, and I'll post the link here in the chat.
Let me pull me off, because better for you to show it bigger.
Here, sure. Let me
I'll remove it. I got it. Yep.
And I'll post it onto the online live streams as well. So this is a website. If you go to icomamerica.com, it's located in the support materials, digital download database, amateur, and there's a section of comic books that they made. They did this a number of years ago, and they did it's 6 episodes of this of a comic book, and it's actually pretty cool to see it. All of them, just drag this in here. It was the Adventures of Zach and Max, and these are all online. They're all free, but it walks through kind of some basics of what ham radio is, what it is, how it works, and kids can just download these and look at them. All the materials are free up there for anybody to kind of go up there and grab and use. And the 6 episodes really take kids kind of through some of the basics of amateur radio and dispel some of the myths and so forth. There are not too many pages. I think there's about 20, 23, 24 pages per comic book that's on there. It really, really nice little bits of information that's up there for that.
I'll have to say Icon has done a really amazing job of supporting scouting. I have been to a number of the high adventure bases in the Florida Keys. There's Florida Sea Base. I had a really great adventure with my troop there, and they had some Icon radios. Phil Mount Scout Ranch, I've been there a couple times, and they have equipment there, as well as the equipment that they loan out. And they just, they have boxes that they send out here and there and everywhere, and they set up, and it's really great to be able to get good equipment, get trained radio operators. The scouting program has had a number, like we talked about, the Radio Merit Badge patch that scouts can earn. There's also there was an amateur radio operator strip. So on your uniform, you could have worn a patch that says, I'm an amateur radio operator, and I have a whole bunch of those. All my kids have them on their uniforms because they are licensed amateur radio operator, as well as there is a interpreter strip. So if you speak a foreign language, if you speak French, or if you speak Spanish, or if you can do American Sign Language, they have a strip that goes on the front of your shirt that goes along with your name tag, and it indicates that, hey, you speak, Hebrew, Spanish, French, ASL, or Morse code, and the Morse code operator strip says Morse in Morse code, and it indicates that you are fluent in that language, such that you could help others communicate if they're not able to communicate in whatever language it is that you're having challenges with. And I think that's a really great thing. Ed asked if we'd post links to the JOTA websites we mentioned. Chris is going to put those up in the show notes when we're done. So those will be available. Otherwise, you can, if you just go out and Google BSA and JOTA, you'll find most of them. Or if you go to the ARRL website and look for JOTA, that's out there. During your field day, If you have the proper type of station, you can have a GOTA, not JOTA with a J, but GOTA with a G, get on the air station. And that's a station that you can have non-licensed folks come and operate. And every year when we do it, because we're a club, a club station can have a JOTA station that goes on top of it. And I always encourage my scouts to come up, and we open it up to the public and allow them to get on the air. Those are great opportunities to, just spark little thoughts in the public's mind about, hey, what is this and how do I get involved? I would strongly encourage anybody who would do these things or want to participate to go get one of the ARRL flyers. You could either order them, they're free, they'll send them to you, you got to pay shipping, but they'll send you a big pack of them, or you can download some flyers that you can print out that talks about what is amateur radio and have them ready to hand out. I have been at so many of these events over the years. When I first started to go, I'd always see somebody walk up and say, well, what are you doing here? And somebody would say, well, we're amateur radio operators, and they would be done. And I was like, that doesn't really help. So I always try to have a big pile of those flyers along, and I try to step in when that happens, because we're used to talking to you folks and want to converse about our hobby and why we love it. And I'll give them a little bit of the elevator pitch, and I'll hand them a flyer to say, hey, here's information about what it is and how you can get involved in the community. And then we offer, classes on a regular basis. And, if you want to become involved, here's how to do it. Come take a class, we'll get you licensed. And, after that, we teach you how to get on the air and how to participate. That's part of the ARRL and the Aries model. But we did it in scouting as well. And honestly, when I was the leader, I was the scoutmaster for my children's troop for almost 10 years. Probably my 5th or 6th year, I had 15 adults and 6 scouts in our troops that were licensed radio operators. And everywhere we went, there was a radio involved in an HT, and we were always like, we knew what was happening. We knew where people were. We knew how to recall them. We knew how to pull them in if they needed to, get information. And there were a number of times where we were able to provide services and support to the community, whether somebody was lost on a trail somewhere or someone who got injured. And we were able to call for help where there was no cell service or any other services available. So
hey, David, before we start to wrap this up, because I know we're starting to get a little long here. One thing I just posted in the chat, the link to the page that I was just scrolling through that had all of these resources on it. This is actually the resources, community resources page on ICOM America that I was scrolling through. And so I just posted that link up there. But I wanted to make a quick note and acknowledgement when you go to set up publicly, especially if you're encouraging youth to come over and check out your station. One of the big concerns is safety, to make sure that your station is safe and that kids running around and being in the area are going to be covered. So a couple of quick safety tips, ones that we've used. Certainly when we set up, say, the solar powered gateway out at Baker to Vegas, and anytime I go down to the local parks and set up, if you're setting up an antenna, use surveyor's flagging tape. Put it on any lines that are down low. I'll actually, oftentimes I'll tie one of those orange surveyor's tapes right to the tent, right to the stake that's holding down the mast or the structure. And I'll do maybe 3 or 4 of them at different heights, because remember, kids are not always the same height as adults. And so they might not see, if you've just got something up above their head. So put several of those surveyor take flags on, you're able to cover those over. Another trick that can really help improve the overall safety is to use the tennis ball trick for the tent stake. So one of the things that I did is I went on to Amazon and I bought the cheapest bag of like 24 or 36 tennis balls that I could find, whatever the most generic kind that I could find. And then just take and cut a small X in them. Just use like a utility knife or something like that. and then you can take it and you can squeeze it. It'll open up the little hole in the tennis ball, and you can slide that right over the tent stake. So it creates this nice, bright, easy to see where the tent stake is located. And then when you've got those flagging tapes on the lines, it really does help. I think you mentioned getting youth involved with helping to set up.
Yeah. So
what are some of the things you do there?
So, we actually, so I get like the caution police tape, that they wrap a crime scene around, at Harbor Freight, you can get big, huge rolls of that. And we use that instead of the surveyor's tape. And we put that on every guy wire that we do. In addition to that, pretty much every time I have to guy any antenna or any other thing, I replace the paracord or the rope that comes with that with paracord that has reflector stripes in it. Like 3M, they put a 3M filament in there. So at night, any flashlight that shines on it, you get a big bright light on that, and that helps to do it. As well as at the dollar store, anybody's dollar store, you could go find glow rings, the crunch, and they light up. And you can get for $1, you get like an 80 pack of the little long things, and they come with little things that turn into bracelets,
and bracelets.
Yeah, bracelets and necklaces, and we put those all over everything. Now, when we go out for Jamboree Jamboree on the Air, the important thing for me in scouting is it's not school. This is hands-on. This is like anything hands-on. So when we go out, I have a couple of 30-foot military mast push-up fiberglass antenna towers, and we put those up. And I know when we first started doing it, the adults were like, well, let's get it set up before the kids there. And I'm like, no, the kids are going to set these up. And I come along I have two big, huge totes of hard hats and gloves. And, we have a safety briefing, because anytime you do anything in amateur radio, anything else, you got to have a safety briefing. And if you want to help me put up this antenna tower, you must listen to the sound of my voice. And if the sound of my voice gets loud and commanding, you need to pay attention, because something's going wrong. And you will wear a hard hat, and you will wear gloves. And I will let you stand with me underneath that thing as we're pushing it up, because I know if we set it up the right way, it's going to be safe. I set up the base of that tripod, and before we push anything up, it's only 4.5 feet tall. We guy it 4 ways from Sunday, such that, I have a scout, I'll literally have a scout hang on it, and then I'll have 2 other scouts try to pull it over. And if they can't pull it over and they can't hang on it, we're good to go. And we start pushing that thing up, and we'll start pulling up antennas, because they learn and they get engaged by doing. They could have all stood 40 feet away, such that they're, 10 feet beyond where the crash site would be if it all went over. But they'd be bored, and they'd be playing on their phones, and they'd be like not having a good time. But if they're there and they're underneath and they've got stuff and they're touching it and they love it. In fact, I had scouts say, can we take it down now? I'm like, no, we're going to be here for a couple. Well, can I come back and help you take it down? Well, of course you can, because it's better for me if I don't have to do all that work, right? Now, they're not so good about the part where you have to get the damp cloth and clean the coax and whatever. They don't understand that, but it's like doing dishes at home. But get them engaged in the setting up and putting it together. And, even the easy ups, they want to do that. They want to help. They want to have hands-on. And that's the way you will find that they're going to get engaged. They're going to love it. They're going to enjoy it all. I miss it. My kids are out of the program.
Hats?
What's that?
Yeah, so you mentioned hard hats. Do the kids show up with hard hats?
No, I bring boxes. I bring them.
You have a box of hard hats.
I have 2 boxes of hard hats.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I bring them because you know what? Because safety first and second and third, and then we get into the other rules. And it's really important. That's part of my safety briefing is, like, I don't want anybody to get hurt. Everybody needs to go home, but I tell them I want them involved. And a boo-boo here or a hurt there those are the life lessons of learning how to do things better. I pinch my fingers and I have a little, blood here, a little that. It happens. It's not the end of the world. I don't want anything crashing down on anybody. I don't want anybody falling off anything, but I want them to be involved. I want them to be engaged. Just like when I teach climbing, I teach, climbing and rappelling, and I'll be out on the side of a 50-foot cliff, and the kids don't want to do it. And you see, it's way worse than radio mirror batch because you literally see their teeth chattering together or their knees buckling, right? And I don't, you don't force anybody to do anything. You just give them an opportunity. And some of them, I've had some of them that I had one year when we did this. That kid spent 4 hours helping me get kids to go over the side of the rappel because he was just too afraid.
Yeah.
And after those 4 hours, we were getting ready to be done. I was like, "You want to try?" No,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe. But he did. He went over, and he's like, "Well, would you come with me?" And I'm like, "Sure." I threw the safety rope over, and the two of us went down together, side by side, such that he had the confidence. But giving them that opportunity to get out there and play and do their things. I saw somebody pool noodles. Pool noodles are awesome.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I'd never heard of that. But that's
we do that.
That's really sharp. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave, thanks so much for kind of going over this. I think the huge take home message here is get the kids involved. Get them on the air anytime you're going out to set up and operate. If kids and their parents are there, and welcome them, invite them to come on over and see what you're doing and engage with them. If you're around this coming weekend, hop on the air and engage with kids that you hear. Or anytime you're operating on the air and you hear a kid calling out CQ or engaging on the air, go ahead and engage them and talk to them and ask them questions. That list of questions on the JOTA site is really helpful. So I really appreciate that. Hey, let's check in on our check-ins here and see how we've got folks coming in. So if you haven't had a chance to send in your check-in, go ahead and send it in real quick to all of our call signs and send that last check-in to us. I'm going to go ahead and check here one last time and see if any more have come in. I've been checking throughout the show, so there may not be any right now. I'll do one more quick check in case there's anyone else still sending something in. And let's go ahead and map this out. Now, we have got a couple of questions recently. You say, hey, guys, how are you doing all of that mapping stuff? It's really, really simple. Anytime you use one of those forms that we used at the beginning of the show, that's one that says a mapping form and you're using the template. If you receive that into your email or into your WinLink check-in, you can do the exact same thing that we're doing. So it's a great activity to see where other members of your group or your community are coming in. It's great for emergency communicators here. So what you do is you come up here to the top, you click on the little globe icon, and you select the form. Now, again, this is a form that you have to receive. It has to be one of the mappable forms. And I've got, I received all of these, so it's coming into the WinLink check-in form. I'll go ahead and select that right there. You can select your map provider, and I've selected Google, but if you click on this, there's a whole bunch of them on here. And if you've got connection to the internet, WinLink will actually cache those tiles for you, the areas of the map where you're zooming in and clicking around. So if you end up in an emergency situation and you do need to do the mapping, as long as you've previously gone through and mapped out something on your particular machine, you'll have the maps available to you locally to use even when you're off grid. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this set to Google here. I'm going to display the map, and let me go ahead and blow this out to full screen. And let me check the filters. Up here in the upper left, there's a button here that says filters, and it'll show you only display reports more than however many hours or so forth. So we're gonna filter right now on the first 10 hours.
The last 10 hours.
I'm sorry, the last 10 hours. So from now to the previous 10 hours or so. And let me go ahead and zoom out, and we'll look globally what kind of check-ins have been coming in. And if you need to click and drag, you use the right click button and then click and hold down and drag. And so I see we've got Terry joining us from New Zealand. Hey, thanks for joining us, Terry. Down there, it looks like, we've got Bill over there in Hawaii. Hey, thanks for joining us there. This looks like Roland over in Germany. Hey, thanks for joining us there. Let me go ahead and zoom in on North America a little bit. So I'm going to come up here and go zoom in a few clicks, right click and drag, and we're going to move that over. And we've got stations coming in. There we are. We've got KC5LAA joining us down there near Houston. This looks like King, KC7LOX. stations over in North Carolina, N2AWE here in Tennessee. That looks like Steve.
That's Steve.
NC S396. He's checking in through his shares license. I mean, how cool is that you can use combine both shares, frequencies, and amateur radio all through WinLink to be able to pass traffic as need be. K8 EAF, thanks for joining there from Ohio, and K8AGY from Michigan. We got KG2MM.
There's Mike.
There we go. Hey, look at that. N7 JVQ. This is like Bill AC7SR. Several more here going on. I'm just going to go click through a few more of these so we can see everybody who's getting in there, and a bunch more down here in the Southern California region as well. So, hey, thanks a lot for checking in and spending a little bit more time here with us on a Sunday here at on WaveTalkers. Let me bring the guys back up, and we'll kind of like go around a little bit. Let me add spotlights to them. And Dan's been holding down the chat a little bit back in the background. Dan, any closing thoughts from you today on this topic of engaging youth with amateur radio?
Well, while I'm not involved with Jamboree on the Air and the Scouts, we do, between Aries and LA City ACS, a lot of public outreach events. At least prior to COVID, we did. And whenever we do one of those, we try to set up a Get on the Air station. And I mean, there's nothing like the look on a kid's face when you coach him a little bit, you hand him the mic and say, push the button and talk. And when they hear somebody responding back to them, it's almost like they've discovered magic, which I guess some of us would say they have. And there's just a look that you don't get it every time. Some of the kids are so scared, and some of the kids that will step to the back so they don't get picked on. But some of them will just march right to the front and raise their hand. And when you get those kids involved, they're so excited about it. And, maybe you reach 1 in 10 or 1 in 100, I don't know, but you've reached somebody, and who knows, that may lead them to go into a career in computers or radio or science or whatever. And I just think it's great. I'm looking forward to playing next week with JOTA, because I have not done that before.
I think for me, one of the things that I love about the setup that you've been working with Dave is both your son and your daughters are all hams. You get them all on the air. One of the great things about amateur radio is it's not an old guys club. It's not an old girls club. It's for everyone of all ages to be able to get on the air. And I love the fact that that you have your daughter so involved with amateur radio. That was you and one of your daughters on today's cover image. We are going to send her a pizza as a thank you. We may not do that right now today, but we will send her one so that she gets one as a big thanks for that. But any other closing thoughts you got?
It's funny, the first year that I took her to the Baker to Vegas race, my son had been helping out for a number of years, and he did not Eagle Scout. He did scout projects to help us out by feeding the operators out in the middle of the desert. He brought all the food, he shot for it on all. But the first year I brought Gwen out, we decided we'd put her on the radio receiving the traffic from the Mile Out station. And one of the curmudgeonly operators, I'm not going to put his call sign out here on the thing, but Dan knows who I'm talking about, or you probably do know, Chris. He was like, is she going to be able to cut it? Is she going to be able to keep up with me and whatever? And I'm like, we'll find out. And if she's not, you let me know. And by the end of the night, he came up to me and he said, she needs to be here next year and going forward, because it was a huge improvement on what we've had previously. And she was accurate, and she was quick, and she was on it. And it was a good experience for everybody all around. The other thing, in the scouting program that I would say is get these kids involved, follow up after you have events like this with them, and offer the one-day technician class, and don't offer it just to the scouts. Get their parents involved, the ones that are interested. If a scout and a parent can get a license, that's really a recipe for success. It will help, kind of cement the going forward. And there are so many other parts about scouting, both in the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts program and the youth programs as well, leadership, in the stuff that's required to become like an Eagle Scout, emergency preparedness, some of the safety, some of the citizenship aspects of it. There is radio that can touch each and every one of the parts of that. And as a teacher for a bunch of those kinds of learnings, I always try to bring that in. And they all know, I'm a radio guy, I do the radio thing. And I try to bring that in everywhere along their way, because they're like, oh, I didn't realize that could be helpful. Oh, and after an earthquake, it could be helpful. And hey, if there's a fire, that could be helpful. And all of those things kind of build on top of that. And as they see it, like I said, over the years, I've had 1 and 2 and 3 and 10. I had a lot of youth that we got licensed. And in fact, we did Eagle Scout projects, which were putting together points of distribution, and actually heard about it in last week in Florida. There was a lot of points of distribution right after the hurricane came through. They have these caches of food and equipment and whatever that people could go and get because their communities were ravaged. Well, we had Eagle Scout projects in our area that included these kinds of points of distribution. And part of the aspect of teaching the scouts to not only put it together, source it, bring the material in, get it ready, was most of them also got their amateur radio license, because in the event of a disaster and if we needed to mobilize these pods to be able to distribute food, we might be in a situation where there's no phone or text messaging available. And how do we get in touch with people? We're going to call you over your amateur radio. And a lot of them, they're like, oh, well, I got to get licensed then. We got to use it. And so lots of opportunity here, lots of ways to get folks involved. And like I said, I know a number of the scouts from when I was involved that are still involved in amateur radio that got licensed. Actually, one of them surpassed me. I'm only a general. He actually got his extra. And so, you never know what'll happen. Someday the student became the master, as it were. So
nice. Hey, thanks everyone for joining us again this week. We're going to come back to this subject several times coming up in the coming weeks and months and years to really help expand on different ways that you can engage youth in and with amateur radio, get them involved and so forth. So if you find the information that we're putting out there really helpful, a great way you can support us is go onto our YouTube channel, go to youtube.com/WaveTalkers, like and subscribe to a lot of our content that we're putting out. If you really find the information that we're putting out there really helpful, go on to wavetalkers.com. We've got the little buy us a coffee link. It really helps us to cover the infrastructure that we're using and help us kind of keep this going every week. So we want to thank everyone who joined us. We really appreciate it. Appreciate you coming and engaging with us. And if you are inside of the Zoom, hang around for the after party where we're going to open up the mics and take questions and so forth. I see Francine is asking, what call sign do youth use? They would definitely use the call sign of the primary operator who is operating the station. So it's the control operator who is sitting there doing the operating. He's the ham or she is the ham who is there with the youth, who's working with them to be able to operate. It's operating off of their call sign. So when we go and we do the JOTA station, we'll probably have multiple stations set up at the site that we're going to use. We'll be using my call sign with the youth who are going to be operating with me. We'll use David's call sign where they're operating with him, Dan. We have a couple of other operators who are going to be coming along with us. And we have a couple of other activities we're going to be doing with them. We're going to do a fox hunt or a transmitter hunt with the kids. We'll have some FRS radios for them to be able to set up and do some of the testing. We'll have like a little kind of mini classroom a little bit to do a little bit of instruction, but we're going to try and preload as much of that on the kids beforehand so that they have some of the background if they're going to earn their radio merit badge. So anyway, thanks so much for joining us. I'm going to turn off the live stream now. If you do want to join us for any of the after parties, then just go on to wavetalkers.com. Down in the bottom, there's a join us link, and we send out a mailing every single week with the new link for the Zoom. So if you want to join us, that's a great way to be able to do that. So thanks, everyone. We'll say 7-3, and if you're in the Zoom, hang around for the after party. So just give me a second to flip some of these digital switches here, and we will get into the after party there. Thanks a lot for joining.